The Quinnipiac women's soccer team won their first MAC championship in school history. The women's ice hockey team lost their first game of the regular season to the Yale Bulldogs, and Madison Chandler has been a driving force for the women's ice hockey team. Will her role change as the team is knee-deep in ECAC play? All this and more starting now on Bobcat Breakdown. Good evening and welcome to Bobcat Breakdown. I am your host for tonight, Andrew Reynolds, and this has been a huge week in Bobcat sports news. Here to break it all down is QBSN chairwoman Emily Sweeney and women's soccer beat reporter for Q30, Santino Mione. Without further ado, let's get into today's topics. The biggest news of the week was the women's soccer team winning their first MAC championship in school history and their first NCAA tournament appearance since 2000. My question for you both is, what was the biggest difference between the two victories for the Bobcats? Santino, you pretty much know this team in and out, so let's start off with Emily.
You know, I think that the biggest difference between these two games was the rest days that Quinnipiac had going into them. I think 8 rest days before that Canisius matchup. Canisius had half of that time. They had only 4 rest days. And I think looking at it, Canisius coming out of a recent PK victory, they had momentum going into that game recently. Quinnipiac didn't have that. They had so much time, and they got out of their competitive rhythm, and I think that really messed with them in the first half against Canisius. And Quinnipiac did go on to win semis, but it was after they got back to their rhythm in the second half and got that goal. I think for the Niagara matchup, Quinnipiac had the momentum coming out of the Canisius game that they lacked going into the Canisius game, and it carried into this game where they played at a high level. I also do think the own goal from Ida Michelli at the first half of that game was a huge difference maker because Niagara kind of got off their balance for at least that first half and going into the second half. So I think it was the momentum, but also the rest time that had to do with it.
Yeah, I'm not that I disagree with what you're saying, Emily. The one thing I'll point to, one of the biggest things, was just the ability for Quinnipiac to be aggressive and the opportunities they created to get shots on net. What we always say is put the ball in front of the net, good things are going to happen. Shots on goal versus Canisius, Quinnipiac only had 4 of them. Against Niagara, they had 13 shots on goal. And the way this team has scored all year from covering this team, Dave Clark has talked about it. The head coach, Dave Clark, in post-game interviews, talks about it all the time. Throughout the season, they have scored on long balls, and they've scored on players like Courtney Chokel and Paige LaBerge going to bringing the ball to the left and right side of the field and then crossing the ball into the middle. That is what they did in this game against Niagara specifically. They didn't do it a lot against Canisius. So the biggest differences were playing aggressive, shots on goal, having a lot more against Niagara, and the mere fact they put the ball in front of the net, put the ball in a position for players like Rebecca Cook to score the ball, and again, put the ball in front of the net, good things are going to happen.
Yeah, I do think, though, that the reason they weren't getting those shots and the reason that they weren't able to get those opportunities was because they were not playing their best coming off of all those rest days. They were not in the competitive nature, and I think that's why they weren't able to get those goals and get those opportunities as much.
You don't think it had anything to do with maybe Canisius throwing a little bit of a different defensive scheme at them, maybe something like that and Niagara didn't do? Do you think that's going to play into it?
I don't think so, because I think the team in the Bobcats knew what they were coming into with Canisius, and I think they had a plan going into it. I just think they weren't in that competitive nature that you need to be into going into it, and Canisius did have that competitive nature, which is what I think that difference was.
One thing I'll say to close it out before we give back to Reynolds, the biggest thing that I saw in this game, or one of the other big things too, was from Quinnipiac's matchup last time they played Niagara in the regular season, they got deterred by Niagara's physical play, and we know from historically this team plays with a physical, aggressive nature. They didn't let that deter them in this game, and they stuck to their offensive game plan. That really shone through in the first and second half of that championship game.
Yeah, I mean, you did bring up Rebecca Cook earlier, and she also had a goal in both games. Speaking of Rebecca Cook, there is no doubt that she has been a significant part in this team's success this year, leading the nation in goals and getting 3 goals in 2 games. The Bobcats played in the MAC playoffs this past weekend with the first round of the NCAA tournament starting on Friday. Will Rebecca Cook continue her dominance at a higher level competition in this tournament? Santino, with you.
Listen, as Matt Mugno has said before, Rebecca Cook, she is her. There's no question about it. 2 goals that she had in the game against Niagara in the championship. She had the go-ahead goal in the 80th minute against Canisius to send them to that championship game. But I'm going to answer your question just flat out, no. She's not going to be as dominant in this tournament. Now, that's not to say she's not going to be effective, because as, you know, I've spoken to Dave Clark and Rebecca Cook, both of them in post-game pressers. Rebecca Cook's natural position is playing at right back. She is not naturally a forward. When she plays in Ireland on the national team, she has played she's played in that right back position. So even though she's not going to maybe as dominant, again, a player who led the MAC and the nation in goals with 22, a Golden Boot Award winner, she's been a phenomenal player. She's not going to be as dominant against higher level competition. She can still definitely be effective. She had 7 assists on the season. She's been a valuable playmaker for the team. But overall, I cannot see her, especially against Penn State, going into this first round of the NCAA tournament. I don't see her being able to be as dominant as she has been in these MAC conference games.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think she is her, but in the MAC. I don't think she's that outside of it. I mean, she'll compete. She's not going to dominate. Teams in the NCAA have seen the film on her. They know how to defend it, and they have the talent to adjust to her and defend against her. I think that's going to play against her a lot in this matchup. I also think competing in the MAC is one thing, and yes, Rebecca Cook does lead nationally, but she got those goals against MAC opponents. She's not going against the level of national talent that Penn State has been going against, so I don't think that she will be able to dominate against these opponents in the NCAA. And I also, you mentioned right back. I think that they might switch her back to right back later on in this matchup because you saw in Niagara, she got shut down by Niagara, not in the championship game, but the one right before that.
Yeah, the one prior, yeah.
Yeah, and I think if Niagara can shut her down that easily in a matchup, why wouldn't an NCAA nationally ranked team be able to do the same? So I could see her even moving back.
I understand why you're saying that. I don't see it happening just because of the firepower she gives them offensively. One of the things you brought up, though, is game planning. These teams in the NCAA tournament, they have had all year to watch film on Rebecca Cook, to study the way that she plays. When you have that much time to focus and key in on one player, there is no way, like physically, she's not going to be able to perform as well. I'll list the stats from the Niagara championship game. 11 shots, 6 of those were shots on goal, and 2 goals in a full 90 minutes in that game. We are not going to see her. I mean, listen, if they end up beating Penn State in the first round, if they go a few rounds further, we're not going to see a stat line like that in the entire NCAA tournament, no matter how many games they play, for the simple fact, again, they've had time to game plan against her, and their whole entire defensive scheme, or at least their entire defensive scheme, should be to key on Rebecca Cook and just take her out of the game and remove her as much as possible. Because if you do that, you give yourself a pretty good chance to beat this Bobcats team.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
All right. I do like how you guys both included what her natural position is, which is right back, right? And I actually kind of agree that maybe they might move her back just because, you know, if they do that, because they want to, because Penn State's a really strong team and they are number 2 in that regional. Yep. And they do want to win. I think also, I noticed in the Niagara game, they moved her back towards the end of the game, and they moved her up as well. So you never know, they might do a bit of a flex. So
we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I do like that. Anyways, speaking of the NCAA Women's Soccer Championship, we got to figure out who they are playing against, and that is Penn State. So how do you guys think that they will fare in this tournament?
I'll let Emily go first, yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be close at the beginning of the game. I do not see Quinnipiac winning. I don't see it necessarily being close at all either. I think that, yes, this team can compete and dominate in the MAC, but against the 6th-ranked team in the NCAA, I don't see them being able to compete to such a high level. I mean, you look at the offense, it's very well-rounded on Penn State's side. You look at the defense, it's a strong defense as well. And they also have a stellar goalie in Catherine Asman, who has a .812 save percentage. It also comes down to experience as well. This is the 28th season in a row that Penn State is going to the NCAA tournament. Well, for Quinnipiac, it's the first time they're going in 22 years. I think you have to look at that experience because it's something that they have the time, they have the dedication, they have the coach who has seen it multiple times, and I think that really does help going into it. And with all of the talent and the experience that Penn State has, I'm not sure that Quinnipiac, although they can dominate in the MAC, will be able to dominate in the NCAA tournament or win. I think it could be like a 2-0, 3-1 sort of game. I just don't see Quinnipiac coming out with the win.
Yeah, Emily went with kind of, I think, the more, like, the answer that's been, the most people have been taking that answer, I feel like. I'm going to shock the world here. Quinnipiac, I expect them to win this game, and that might contradict what I said in the last answer, saying that Rebecca Cook is not going to be as dominant. Quinnipiac is going to win this game against Penn State, and let me tell you why. Even though Cook, again, won't be as dominant, this team has a lot of great players like Olivia Scott, like Courtney Chokel, like a leader like Lauren Triglione. They have a lot of great players. The main thing I'm going to point to, though, for this team, if you saw on the full screen earlier, Quinnipiac per game in terms of their averages comparatively to Penn State, they average more goals per game, more shots on goal, and more assists per game. The only thing that Penn State had them on was saves per game. I understand Penn State is a very good and very skilled defensive team. With the offensive firepower of this team, and yes, granted, we know a lot of it has come from Quinnipiac. If we look at their total goals, Quinnipiac, I believe, has about 53 on the season. Penn State, not even 40. I believe it's around 35. So Quinnipiac almost has 20 more total goals on the season. With that offensive firepower, I'm taking Quinnipiac to win this game and possibly win a few more after that.
But Quinnipiac's not playing the teams Penn State's playing. Penn State's playing nationally ranked teams. Quinnipiac's playing random teams in the MAC. I don't think you can compare their stats like that because they're not playing teams that are equivalent in those stat categories. Quinnipiac's playing teams that don't have as many shots on goal, so obviously it's going to be different. Penn State's playing these nationally ranked teams consistently and getting wins. I don't think you can compare stats in that scenario.
Emily, can I ask you just one quick question? All right, do you watch college basketball?
Yeah.
Okay, so you watched the most recent NCAA tournament, right? Who was the team that made the Elite Eight as a 15 seed? I just want to ask a quick question.
Okay.
No, but it's just...
That has nothing to do with this, though, and I think...
Hey, who made it? Who made it to the Elite Eight? And what conference were they from?
I get that, Tino. I get that they were from that conference, and
the St. Peter's Peacocks made it to the Elite Eight in the men's NCAA tournament. All I'm saying is, the MAC conference, we have special teams that can make stuff happen in these kind of tournaments. That's all I'm saying. Quinnipiac's winning this game against Penn State.
I do not agree.
I love both of your points there, but it's time to switch to the other side of the soccer team. We have the men's team. They recently earned the MAC regular season champions, and with that in mind, Bobcats host Niagara on Thursday in Hamden and have home field advantage throughout the entire MAC playoffs, and if they win on Thursday. Emily, we'll start off with you. Last question before the break. Can we expect a win from this Bobcat squad going into this game versus Niagara?
Yeah, I do think that they're going to win. I think the last time these two teams matched up, the Purple Eagles did take the win, but it was at home and it was 1-0. It was a very close game. I don't think that will be the case when the Bobcats have home advantage. Rodrigo Almeida was the one that scored the lone goal for Niagara, but in my opinion, David Burcedo is going to come out in this game. He's going to score. I think the offense in Quinnipiac is going to be able to outplay and outscore Niagara, especially with the recent loss in their minds. It was the last game they played. And in that last game, the shot counts were similar. The save count was in Quinnipiac's favor. So overall, I think the win-loss count for this matchup is actually 7 wins for Quinnipiac and 3 for Niagara. So I do think the Bobcats are going to come away with this win because of their offensive power, and I don't think it's a question.
Yeah, I'm not going to debate with you here. The only things I'll bring up, their home record this year for Quinnipiac, 8-0-1. Their road record, 3-4-2. They are historically a better team at home than they are on the road. This game will be in Hamden. The whole tournament's going to run through Hamden. It's going to be very beneficial for this Bobcats team. Burcedo, Golden Boot Award winner, I agree with you. He's going to definitely score a goal in this game. And also, just, the men's team offense unusually was not high-powered in this game. I don't expect that to happen again.
Yeah, I cannot wait for some playoff soccer here in Hamden later in the week. Santino, Emily, great job so far. Right after the break, we will break the ice and talk about everyone's favorite, Quinnipiac ice hockey. You will not want to miss it. Stay tuned.
Meet the scan, a simple procedure whose mission is to detect lung cancer early.
I'm here to save you!
But I feel fine.
That's great, but you may still be at high risk for lung cancer.
Oh man, that's a new fence.
If you smoke, early detection could save your life. Learn more at savedbythescan.org.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
Type 2 diabetes can have a big impact on your life, but how can it be prevented? Well, the first step is knowing if you have prediabetes, a serious medical condition that puts you at high risk for type 2 diabetes. 1 in 3 American adults has prediabetes, but more than 80% don't know they have it. The good news is, prediabetes can be reversed, and for many people, healthy changes in their daily routine can make a big difference. Take the 1-minute risk test today at doihaveprediabetes.org.
When we adopt a shelter pet, we discover they're a unique mix of all kinds of things.
Come on, Jules, spot me on this last one. There it is. Keep going with it. Leo.
They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love.
Welcome back. Men's ice hockey beat reporter Matt Mugno is in the studio to talk about the teams consistently and the weekend sweep. Let's take a look.
The Bobcats swept their weekend home series against conference opponents, the Colgate Raiders and Cornell Big Red. The Bobcats, down 2-0, surged back with a power play, quarterback Zach Metza contributing to all 3 goals in Friday's 3-2 victory. In a sold-out M&T, they defeated Cornell in a 9-save shutout. They've gone 7 for 37 on the power play, and they've scored 3 of those goals this weekend. They've scored 28 goals. 1/4 of their goals scored on the power play. Against Colgate, they had 9 chances. Against Cornell, they had 5. Prior to this weekend, they scored 3 power play goals in 6 games. I broke down the power play a few weeks back. It's historically a problem for the Hamden heavyweights. The 1-3-1 system seemed to carry the Bobcats this weekend, but it went 3 for 14 overall in the weekend sweep. Colin Graff has been a notable addition to the unit in that Ovechkin office, and DeYoung is delivering as the bumper with Metza at quarterback. Yanni Perez recorded a shutout, only facing 9 shots on goal against Cornell. Pecknold then senior assistant captain Ethan DeYoung in Friday's presser prefaced that the Cornell matchup would not be skill hockey, but a grind. We've seen the team struggle to score against unranked LIU and surrender 3 in 5 minutes to unranked Maine, following that with a 6-2 victory. We've seen the team blow a lead to North Dakota in Game 1, then break a game wide open the following night. Emily, Tino, is consistency a problem for the Bobcats?
Emily, I'll let you start off with this, reiterating what Mugno said. How surprised were you about the sweep this week?
I think that I wasn't really surprised, but I think it is a consistency issue in the team in general. I mean, this team is extremely inconsistent. They won against ranked teams like North Dakota 6-2. Then they followed up with a brutal loss to an unranked team in Maine 0-4, who they then turn around the next day and beat them 6-2. Right there, that's just showing an inconsistency in the team. Then they did beat Cornell and Colgate, but not in a winning fashion or how they should have. They won by 1 goal against Colgate, and they won by 2 against Cornell, but it was an empty netter for the second one. So 2 unranked opponents, they could barely play and narrowly won. I think this men's team plays to the level of their opponents, and I think that causes a lot of their inconsistency.
Yeah, well, I do agree that, this Quinnipiac team can be slightly inconsistent. Again, they had a 3-0 lead against North Dakota in their first game on the road, ended up getting outscored 5-2 in the next 2 periods. Yes, they have some kind of inconsistency issues, but overall, I think it's a very simple fix that Rand Pecknold can apply to this team. It's a matter of just playing, they play up to high-level competition, and they tend to play down to lower-level competition. That is a simple kind of mental fix you can instill within your team, and in the locker room, you just have to make them understand, we have to wake up and play every single team like they are a top 5, number 1 ranked team in the nation, like they're a team, like Minnesota Duluth, Minnesota even. Just play these teams like they are some of the best in the country. And if you play like that against all these teams, I guess your semi-inconsistency issues will be solved. Because I will say, their power play has been a lot better this year. Like, there are aspects of this team that used to be very inconsistent that are a lot better this season. So yes, have some of the games displayed a level of inconsistency? Sure, but I don't think we should be concerned and it's as big of a deal as some people are making it out to be.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be a very easy fix because they're just not playing to their best ability in every game, and that's just something that has to come from the coaching staff, and I think they're going to fix it pretty easily.
Even just the captains on the team, too, it can come from them as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the Bobcats have a huge rivalry game coming up against Yale this weekend, so hopefully they can win that. So switching up locker rooms here, the women's ice hockey team has lost their first game in the regular season to Yale. Do you credit Yale's strong defense, or is the loss on Quinnipiac's defense or lackluster on offense?
Yeah, listen, I'll say this. Quinnipiac, did they play to the level they should have offensively that we've been used and accustomed to seeing them play? Not by any stretch of the imagination. But I have to give the credit to Yale's defense on this. As a team, Yale had 17 total blocks on the game. Quinnipiac, again, they didn't play up to the usual standards. Yale kept them, though, on the outside, locked up the middle, and they weren't letting anything inside. Didn't allow the puck to get in the center of the ice. And also, if you looked at the possession in each team's offensive zone, Yale dominated the possession of the puck. Every time Quinnipiac would try to get the puck out of Yale's offensive zone, Yale would end up making a play to keep it there, and Quinnipiac just really couldn't get a consistent rhythm going offensively. That has to be credited to the Yale's defense. Again, I understand Quinnipiac may not have played to their level, but if you have to give more credence to one side, I'm giving credit to this defense 100%.
I'm going to disagree. I think the loss was because their offense, Quinnipiac's offense, was not playing the way they've played in previous games. We've seen this team play well, and we've seen their offense shine. And Mobley, Chandler, and Maloney, all on the second line, they have 5, 6, and 7 goals respectively on this season. Not one of them scored in that game. And the second line is their offensive powerhouse. They didn't score. They did not score. And I think that's a problem. Your offensive line that has been helping throughout the whole season does not score.
But Emily, not to cut you off, but don't you have to give credit to the defense for creating a game plan to stop that? Because if that's the way they're scoring all season, Yale is going to come into this game saying, we are not going to allow that second line to score at all. So you have to give the credit to them because they made a game plan, executed it to perfection, and didn't allow that line to score.
I just don't think it was a game plan. I think that the offense wasn't communicating, and I think that was the issue. I don't think the defense was great. The offense just couldn't get into their rhythm, and I think that was the problem in their passing.
We disagree. Okay.
Well, continuing on the women's ice hockey team, before the Yale versus Quinnipiac game, the ECAC announced their monthly awards to none of our surprise, first-year standout Madison Chandler, who won ECAC Rookie of the Month. My final question for you guys on the topic of hockey is, since she is a first-year, or she's the first year to win this award this season, what does this mean for her role on the team and maybe this year and beyond?
Emily, you can take this one.
Yeah, I think it won't, and I think it shouldn't change. I think she is a talented first year who is surrounded by a talented second line that will be able to teach her and bring out the best in her, which will in turn make the Bobcats team better in the future when she is a potential leader for this team. And why would you want to hinder that growth of a player as strong as Chandler? She has scored 6 goals, has 3 assists. She's getting the opportunities right now to work off of and learn from Olivia Mobley and Shea Maloney. And I think you cannot change her role. You cannot take her off this line. You definitely shouldn't. As for next year, I could see an assistant captain badge in her future. I think she is a player that will make a difference in the future, but right now you cannot take those learning opportunities away from her so early in her collegiate career.
I'll stick to just this season. Again, she's been one of their top goal scorers. She's the only first year on that second line with Maloney, with Mobley. She's been one of the leaders on the team so far, and the crazy thing is, in the beginning of the year, in her first ever home game, having that hat trick, she was still figuring out where her place was on the team and still figuring out how to fit on this team. And she had a hat trick. Imagine what will happen when she figures it all out, really gets her place set on this team. She's going to be so dangerous, even though she already is.
Yeah, I agree with you, Santino, on how she's already very dangerous on this Bobcat squad. It is time to take our final break of the night. When we come back, we have the QBSN Call of the Week and our final roars. So stick with us. We'll be right back.
Maybe you can make retirement happen. After all, you made home ownership happen. Homeschooling yourself on loans, beefing up your credit score.
So I'm pre-approved.
You were like, yes! Sorry. Color coding listings, ticking boxes, and flushing every toilet in a 20-mile radius. Home sweet home. You aced House Hunter. Now get the tips you need to get on track at aceyourretirement.org.
What do you think you're doing, Kevin?
Was just gonna drive home.
There are several warning signs present that you shouldn't be driving.
Like hearing voices?
Like your text-to-emoji ratio?
Oh man, the selfies.
Selfie, nailed it.
We all have warning signs that let us know that we're probably not okay to drive. Mine is pretending to be your subconscious.
Craig, come on man, let's split a ride home.
I think it's just vapor with flavor.
It won't hurt my kid like cigarettes, right?
Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
There's really not even that much nicotine in them, right?
My kid?
My kid knows it's dangerous.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping, maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
Welcome back. It's now time to take a look at Q30 President Television Benjamin Kane's call on the QBSN Call of the Week 4 when he got the when he called the women's soccer after they won the MAC championship. Let's take a listen.
It's been a great match to watch in Hampton. It looks like Niagara's trying to get on the score sheet, and they can't do it. But 5 seconds remaining in Hampden, and your 2022 MAC women's soccer champions are the Quinnipiac Bobcats. The first time in their history, and look how much it means to them. You hear the crowd, you hear the team, you hear the coaching staff, you hear everyone in Hampden cheering on their team, and what a way to do it in this season. Even the men's team going to run on the field to celebrate with them as well. What a fantastic way to cap off the
We
rest
have
of their
come to the end of our show, but before we sign off for the night, we got our final. Aurora Santino, you started off.
So college basketball is officially back, and the Bobcats got off to a rocking start as they defeated the Rhode Island Rams 67-62. Thanks to a double-double from graduate transfer forward Ike Nweke, as well as a 15-point effort off the bench from Louis Courtwright, the Bobcats pulled off the massive upset. It's bad enough that Rhode Island suffered this loss at home, but on top of the loss itself, Rhode Island paid Quinnipiac to play in this game. Rhode Island literally paid the Bobcats to come into their home court and beat them. This is a statement win for a team that lost multiple key players from last year, including the likes of Jacob Bergoni and Kevin Marfo. Head coach Baker Dunleavy was extremely impressed with the new players and their ability to fit in well in a brand new system, as he should be. Seeing as this is only their first game, and they played a very high-level opponent, everyone should expect big things from this Bobcats team as the season moves forward.
About 10 years ago, Quinnipiac University faced a Title IX lawsuit that brought about a lot of change for women's sports. For a little bit of history on this topic, members of the Quinnipiac volleyball team, which was planned to be removed in the following year, decided to file a Title IX suit against the university. They stated that the school violated Title IX by, quote, failing to allocate an equitable number of varsity athletic participation opportunities to female students, end quote. The school lost the suit and was given a list of requirements they needed to fulfill as reparations. A policy on Title IX was put into place. The volleyball team would get to stay, men's golf was replaced by women's golf, and they had to spend at least $5 million on renovating women's athletic facilities where they constructed a new field hockey venue, rugby pitch, and lacrosse and soccer stadium that had all the bells and whistles. More scholarships for female athletes were also put into place, and they remained there for years. Since then, the women's teams have continued to grow in talent, which has shown, and this case continues to show its importance through these team successes. With the women's soccer team moving on to the NCAA tournament for the first time since 2000, the acrobatics and tumbling team going to the national tournament last year, and various other women's teams making runs in the playoffs consistently. The Title IX case made this all possible, and it gave female athletes much more opportunities at Quinnipiac University with newer and better facilities, as well as more scholarship opportunities, which has in turn catapulted these teams and the university's success.
When I was younger, I was a huge Boston College Eagles fan, right at the peak when the men's hockey team was winning NCAA national championships year after year. In 2016, they went to yet another Frozen Four and played a team I had never heard of, and that was Quinnipiac. A few years later now, I am at that school I had never heard of, but I love it and have no regrets. When I was applying, I was looking for a school that had good athletics and a good nationally competitive team. That team that was on the surface was the Quinnipiac men's ice hockey team. When I came to school, I thought it was the only I thought they were the only team here that was nationally competitive, but boy, was I wrong. There were so many other teams that are nationally competitive, such as the women's ice hockey team that has consistently been good this year, and this year has had one of the best starts ever. Also, not to mention both the men's and women's soccer teams, both have won the MAC conference regular season and have a chance of winning the NCAA tournament. People may think of the men's hockey team when they think of Quinnipiac, but there are so many other great teams at this school to follow and attend games for. Thank you all for watching tonight's Bobcat Breakdown. Be sure to stick with us on social media at Q30 Television, follow our website at q30tv.com, and download the Q30 app, now available in all app stores. On behalf of Santino Mione and Emily Sweeney and myself, Andrew Reynolds, to all the producers and everyone behind the scenes, have a great night.